February 1983, continuing Savitri, Book 1, Canto 5.
As a result of the descent, a number of changes take place in Ashwapati. Increased and heightened were the instrumental nature. Illusion lost her aggrandizing lens. As long as one lives in ignorance, one is subject to the action of illusion, of imagining things where there are none, exaggerating proportions. Now, with the descent of the higher consciousness, Ashwapati's illusion lost her aggrandizing lens, is the lens which exaggerates, which blows things out of proportion. That lens was lost. That means illusion could no more give a distorted picture of things. As from her failing hand the measures fell, atomic looked the things that loomed so large. The imagery is from the hand of illusion, the hand that was getting weaker and weaker. The measures which she used to supply fall down. And the first result was things that looked so large, things that occupied a large proportion of his time, energy, they lost their hugeness. They looked atomic. That is, what looks big, what looks large, a very difficult thing, a very huge affair, in ignorance, when we are in the right consciousness, it becomes insignificant. One doesn't care. This change takes place, and the little ego's ring could join no more. The personality in ignorance is always held by a ring of ego. Now here, the two ends of the ring which encircle could no more join. That is, it lost its strength. The ring of ego got widened. Ego always restricts, constricts, but here the two ends of the ring could no more join. The body in the enormous spaces of the self, as one rises, one becomes aware of the self and the vast spaces of the self. One is no longer contained in the little physical space, but innumerable vast spaces spring up, and they belong to the self. In those enormous spaces, the body now seemed only a wandering shell. the body to which we give so much importance, which occupies so much of our attention, it seems only a shell, a wandering shell. It moves from place to place. His mind, the many frescoed outer court of an imperishable inhabitant. The mind, which is full of thoughts, full of ideas and conceptions, so picturesque, so varied, and so important to us. Now it becomes only the outer court, not the real house, but the veranda, the vestibule. Many frescoed, large number of paintings, decorations, representing our varied thoughts, conceptions, and that it is an outer court of an imperishable inhabitant. There is a divine, an immortal inhabitant, indweller. He lives within, and the mind is only the outer court, maybe picturesque, maybe many imaged, but it is the outer court. His spirit breathed a superhuman air. His spirit is no longer imprisoned in this little complex of body, mind and life, but it emerges, breaks open and breathes a superhuman air. The imprisoned deity rent its magic fence. There is a fence, a firm sense enclosing the human spirit. Our soul, the divine element in us, is imprisoned in a fence. And that fence is magic because it is enchanting. We are not in a hurry to jump that fence. But this imprisoned deity gets that strength to break, rend this magic fence and more. As with the sound of thunder and of seas, vast barriers crashed around the huge escape. As the imprisoned deity, as the inner spirit escapes the jail in which it was held so long, the vast barriers, walls crashed down with the sound of thunder and of seas. Note that the sound of thunder, the sound of the ocean, they are two of the sounds which you hear in yoga as you proceed. There are as many as I believe 10 sounds which are described in all yogic texts, and Sri Aurobindo has described them very vividly in the Savitri. There is the crooning, there is the tingling bell, there is the crooning bee, there is the passing of the caravan, there is the sound of thunder, there is the roll of the seas, there is the sound of cricket, cut, cut, cut like that. There is the sound of the drum, there is the sound of a large talking going on. I don't get the other two, I don't remember, but there are 10 sounds. So it's not that one hears all the 10 sounds. Any one of them one may hear. And it is to be taken that it means the yogic, the subtle sight, subtle ear is opening, and something in the subtle physical is being heard. So it is not for poetic effect that he makes this expression here, but with a yogic significance. So each time you hear such a sound in your meditation or contemplation, it signifies some change that is taking place. As with the sound of thunder and of seas, vast barriers crashed around the huge escape. He describes further the barriers, those things which enclosed, immutably coeval with the world. These barriers, these walls can't be moved. They are as extensive as the whole world. There is no part of the world which is beyond them. Circle and end of every hope and toil in this life, in this world, every hope, every toil is ultimately circled by this barrier. At the end, you have to take account of these barriers. You can't get across. Inexorably drawn round thought and act, nature has drawn them inexorably. You have to obey. Around your thought and act, your widest thoughts, your loftiest thoughts, they can't go beyond. Your mightiest acts, they can't transgress these barriers. The fixed, immovable peripheries, the farthest limit, the fixed, immovable peripheries effaced themselves. No effort had to be done. They wiped themselves out. They crashed beneath the incarnate's tread, at the footsteps, at the tread of the divine descent, incarnate of the embodied divine power. All these barriers restricting the world movements, they effaced themselves. They are no longer there. The dire velamen, thin membrane which covers from the top, and bottomless crypt at the bottom, unfathomable vault between which life and thought forever move. Our life and our thought move between two extremes. The harsh, bare membrane, velamen above, and the bottomless crypt below, between which life and thought forever move, forbidden still to cross the dim, dread bounds. Our thought and our life are forbidden to go beyond these dangerous boundaries. The guardian darkness is mute and formidable. There is a darkness below, the darkness of the inconscient and the subconscient, and the superconscient darkness above. That light is so bright that it looks like dark for us. They are guarding, that darkness is guarding from above, and another darkness from below. The guardian darkness is mute and formidable, powerful, imposing, empowered to circumscribe the wingless spirit. Our spirit has not yet developed the wings to fly. It is still in its infancy. And these darknesses These limits are empowered or authorized to circumscribe, to draw a line around which our spirit can't move. Circumscribe in the boundaries of mind and ignorance. The circle drawn has the circumference of ignorance and the boundary of mind. You can't go beyond them. Protecting no more a dual eternity. Now these things, so long what they were doing? They were protecting a dual eternity, duality, dvandva, joy and pleasure, light and shadow, all these happiness and misery. Wherever one is there, the other is there. That is a characteristic feature of our world. They are almost eternal. So this eternal duality was being protected to live and exist by these boundaries, by these darknesses. Now they vanished, rescinding their enormous role. They were empowered to play a huge role, but now in vanishing they cancelled. Rescinded is cancelled their enormous role. Once figure of creation's vain ellipse, what was once the oval shape of the moving creation, the expanding zero lost its giant curve. The movement of this creation looks like an oval, but it is always expanding, because it is a constant becoming. It lost its giant curve. At the invasion of the infinite, at the touch of the eternal, that firm outline, curve, it loses its solidity. The old adamantine vetoes stood no more. Veto. Nature has built certain vetoes, not this, don't do that, you can't do this. If you do that, you have to suffer. So these negations, adamantine, hard, unbreakable, they stood no more. They are no more operative. Overpowered where earth and nature's absolute rule. What was so long an unbreakable, unappealable rule of nature and of earth, they were overpowered by the higher consciousness or force. The python coils of the restricting law could not restrain the swift arisen God. Swift arisen God in Ashwapati, that his being, Godhead in him, has risen swiftly as a result of the impact from above. And that God could not be restrained anymore by the python coils of the restricting law. Python coils, endless coils of the prevailing law of nature. They could not hold him back. Abolished were the scripts of destiny, the laws of destiny. They could no longer govern. They were abolished. There was no small death-hunted creature more. Man, the mortal, is a death-hunted creature. But Ashwapati is no more that. no fragile form of being to preserve from an all-swallowing immensity. All our attempt in life is to preserve our little ego personality, to what we call ourselves, to preserve ourselves separate from the whole world which is invading upon us. We look upon everybody and everything else as our enemy, and we feel in constant danger, and we guard ourselves. But now with this change, there is no more fragile form of being to be preserved from an all-swallowing immensity. The infinite comes to devour the finite. The great hammer beats of a pent-up world heart, the world heart so long suppressed, kept under lid. Now it is coming up, and the great hammer beats, because it is coming up so long suppressed. The heartbeats are like hammer beats. Burst open the narrow dams that keep us safe, the little boundaries, the little walls that keep us safe from the oceanic waters of existence. Those things were burst open by the hammer beats of the world heart, and these narrow dams, boulders, walls, they normally keep us safe against the forces of the universe. We go to unimaginable lengths in guarding ourselves from being flooded by large waves of the infinite, of the eternal, of the universe. We go on shutting doors and windows, trying to become safe. But all those now break down. The soul and cosmos faced as equal powers. The soul in Ashwapati and the entire cosmos, they now front each other as equal powers. The soul is not a speck compared to which the cosmos is immense and vast, a boundless being in a measureless time, invaded nature with the infinite. Summing up the changes, he says, a boundless being, an unbounded being, in a measureless time, in the moment of the eternal, invaded nature with the infinite. This is the finite world, and the infinite invades it, upsets all its laws, its customs, its conventions, its borders, its walls, its dams. All things are uprooted. And then Ashwapati, he saw unpathed, unwalled his titan scope, the entire range, the scope for his movement, for his expansion, for his journey, he says, opening up ahead, unpathed. There are no roads laid down. There are no paths which are built. It is all open, unwalled. There are no walls. There are no paths. All is a virgin territory. Increased and heightened were the instruments. Illusion lost her aggrandizing lens, as from her failing hand the measures fell. Atomic looked the things that loomed so large. The little ego's ring could join no more. In the enormous spaces of the self, the body now seemed only a wandering shell. His mind, the many frescoed outer court of an imperishable inhabitant. His spirit breathed a superhuman air. The imprisoned deity rent its magic fence, as with a sound of thunder and of seas, vast barriers crashed around the huge escape, immutably coeval with the world, circle and end of every hope and toil, inexorably drawn round thought and act. The fixed, immovable peripheries effaced themselves beneath the incarnate's tread. The dire velamen and bottomless crypt, between which life and thought forever move, forbidden still to cross the dim, dread bounds. The guardian darknesses, mute and formidable, empowered to circumscribe the wingless spirit in the boundaries of mind and ignorance, protecting no more a dual eternity, vanished, rescinding their enormous role. Once figure of creation's vain ellipse, the expanding zero lost its giant curve. The old adamantine vetoes stood no more. Overpowered were earth and nature's absolute rule. The python coils of the restricting law could not restrain the swift arisen God. Abolished were the scripts of destiny. There was no small death-hunted creature more, no fragile form of being to preserve from an all-swallowing immensity. The great hammer beats of a pent-up world heart burst open the narrow dams that keep us safe against the forces of the universe. The soul and cosmos faced as equal powers. A boundless being in a measureless time invaded nature with the infinite. He saw unpathed, unwalled his titan scope